Now, going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Vivek Ramaswamy's plan to drain the swamp. Now, as he gains more and more political momentum, I'm seeing these clips go more and more viral. So he is one of I was about to say the forerunner. He's usually in third place, some in second for the Republican nominee. You have Trump, who, depending on what poll you're seeing, he's up by 40% or 40 points in the polls compared to DeSantis. But it's usually, most of the polls are pretty consistent. You have Trump coming in at number one for Republican nomination. Then you have, somehow, for now, we'll see, you have Ron DeSantis at number two, and you have Vivek Ramaswamy number three. Now, he recently went on the Valuetainment podcast, which is probably one of my favorite shows. I absolutely recommend it. They have some great content there. And Vivek went on the show, he talked to him, and this is a couple minutes long, but considering the importance of the topic for many people who are concerned about people who are appointed for life in government and have basically no oversight or accountability, I think it's a good topic to address. So I'm going to play that really quick.
To follow up on that, for you to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. So when they asked Trump, I think it was Maria Bartiromo that asked him a question saying, hey, you said you're going to drain the swamp, but you didn't do it. You hired Chris Wray. You hired this guy. You hired that guy. He says, well, looking back, I regret the hire here. Chris Christie told me about this. I didn't really know the people there. I'm a real estate guy. I'm a New York guy. This is not something I know about. So what do you say to the Republican voter that's sitting there saying, Vivek, we love the way you're coming up. Listen, we love your messaging, your passion, your youth. But why would we re-elect a person that definitely has no experience in the White House? Who are you going to hire? Who are you going to fire? You don't know these guys. Who are you going to put in the office to say, well, I'm going to fire this guy and I'm going to bring this guy and I'm going to bring that guy? You don't have any experience with these guys in the swamp. So what do you say to those guys that don't trust who you're going to hire? They like you. Well, you can fix everything. How do you address that?
And then in terms of his background, Vivek was an entrepreneur in the pharmaceutical industry, his family coming from India, pretty much achieving the American dream, and he's also a published author as well.
So look, I think I'm the best shot we got. And nobody's perfect, but I'm also going to build on the foundation laid by Trump. I actually think, let's be really clear, I think that there's a lot he didn't do that we would have wanted.
Now, politically speaking, in terms of moves on the chessboard, brilliant. He's doing brilliantly right here. He's making sure he doesn't insult the Trump voters, because there are a lot of people who adamantly believe in Donald Trump, and they're going to vote for him no matter what. Now, again, depending on the circumstances, if Trump is in jail or depending on how the government pursues him, he may not be a candidate. Some are calling it Banana Republic. Hard to argue with that. And if he cannot run, appealing to his audience is still a prudent idea, because, again, you want to gather those votes.
Him to do, but I think he did more than any president in the 21st century.
That's not what I'm asking, though. That's not what I'm asking.
So how are we going to actually bring the people in, is the question.
You don't have contacts there. Okay.
Well, we're already starting, actually.
How?
So I'm starting now. I mean, we already published our list of federal judges, for example. The judges we'd appoint to the Supreme Court, the judges that will appoint to the appellate courts. What did I look at? So my view is the U.S. president already has the legal authority to fire large numbers of employees in the federal government. This tripped up Trump. This is the difference between me and Trump, actually, is I think the people around him didn't do him a service by spouting the traditional establishment orthodoxies to him. What did they say? He wanted to fire people. They said, no, you can't do it because there's these civil service protections that stop you as the president from firing employees. Well, I suggest read the law. Turns out that civil service protections only apply to firing individual civil servants. They do not apply to mass layoffs. And mass layoffs are absolutely what I am bringing to the federal bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. And so you got to have, at once, a president who is an outsider, is a CEO, understands that if somebody works for you and you can't fire them, that means they don't work for you. It means you work for them because you're responsible for what they do without any authority to change it. Me and Trump both have that. But it's a separate piece of this, which is an outsider who also has a deep understanding of the Constitution. And Hannibal asked the question. I'm grateful he read my 3 books. So if other people want to, you can check out the same thing. I understand the laws in the Constitution of this country. Many of the passages from my book have been quoted in.
Interestingly enough, I can't help but think, how many people in Washington really have read the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, or any of the documents by the Founding Fathers? Have any of them read the Federalist Papers or anything? I can't help but doubt most of them have not.
Appellate court cases. in the last 3 years about actually big tech censorship being suppressed government action. And so that's the combination, Patrick, that will allow me to declare independence from the managerial swamp class. That's the advisors. And then on the practical side of this, we're already starting. We've got a project led by business leaders who I've known for a long time, already recruiting for positions, not just the cabinet level. Who's running the Office of Management and Budget? Who's running the Office of Personnel Management?
Do you have specific names?
We do. We have lists that we're working down and winnowing down, absolutely. And far earlier than Trump started.
Fine. So who are these people that are helping you process issues? I understand as a founder, CEO, we both run a company, and there's a reason why we have a board. The board's kind of helping you with the blind spots that you have. So Trump chose Christie as an advisor, right? Christie wasn't a VP, but Christie is the reason why we got Chris Wray, and we're dealing with what the DOJ is doing to Trump, indictment, back to back to back. Trump hired that person, right? Who's in your ear to help you pick the right people in these different positions?
It's not Chris Christie, I'll tell you that.
So
So it's a group of people, some of whom are ex-government, many of whom, though, are really smart people who are not in government. And I have a strong bias towards that. I think it will take somebody who has a fresh perspective to actually understand who's going to be a bulldog in that role. Here's the mistake Trump made, right? You take those two positions I just mentioned, the Office of Management and Budget. That's like the CFO of the executive branch. And the Office of Personnel Management. That's like the head of HR in the executive branch. A lot of presidents make the mistake of putting in people in those roles who are mediators. They're almost like ambassadors for the administrative state back to the U.S. president. I don't want an ambassador.
Useless yes man, you mean?
I want a bulldog who is going in there with a fundamentally anti-government bias to see through my directive to fire large numbers of employees and shut down agencies that shouldn't exist. Now, here's the twist in that. We will get sued when we do this, right? People who are fired are going to say, no, we're going to sue you, we're going to take you to court. This is good. Because the current Supreme Court, which I've studied, which I give Trump credit for, he gave us a great Supreme Court. The justices I filtered for also fit the same description. They agree with me on this 6-3. So what do we do then? Then we win. Now we're driving real long-term change because the next president who comes after me won't have his hands tied in the same way. And so, yes, I think it is a unique combination of somebody who is an outsider, who has been an entrepreneur or an executive or somebody who has led major businesses, created thousands of jobs, but also somebody who has a constitutional...
But you didn't do it.
Who has led major businesses, constitutional depth, to be able to act with conviction without what the managerial class tells them. And that's what gives me a sense of obligation to do this, Patrick.
Okay, so if you like this...
So that was pretty damn good for a political interview. Usually most of them acquiesce from every question and they kind of keep it broad. I think one of the reasons we're seeing Vivek increase in popularity, not just in some of the polls, but also online, is he actually tells people how he's going to get stuff done, which if you can quantify that, it makes it a lot more easy to hold these people responsible. Once they get elected, people ask, well, why didn't you do this? You said you were going to get more jobs or get more gun rights. And they just say, oh, I couldn't do that, the Congress, stuff like this, that. And they come up with, usually BS excuses. But if you know from the beginning their exact game plan, it's a lot easier to hold them accountable. You're going to ask them, why are you going to do A, B, and C? If that didn't work, you better have a backup plan. What's your backup plan? Is it going to A, B, C, A, D? What are you going to do? So I think that, as well as the fact that you say read documents by the founding fathers, which nowadays I don't even think public schools are a category in and of itself. But we have history scores at all-time low, I'm not surprised. But if you actually read documents by the founding fathers, he'd probably be one of a handful if he makes it to Washington. And I think that's another reason people are starting to believe in him more and more and give him more support. And it'll be interesting to see how quickly could he pass DeSantis in these polls. I've seen the one poll where he did pass DeSantis, but how close can you get, or how much does DeSantis need to screw up in order to move down in the polls so Vivek could surpass him? It'll be interesting to see. I see more and more of a public perception shifting towards Vivek, especially online, but let me know in the comments, has your perception of Vivek changed in the past 6 months? Does he look like a better candidate than DeSantis? Could he beat Trump? There's a lot of speculation about that. It'll be interesting to see. I know a lot of people in the comments earlier in my other videos, I suggested that he might be going for a VP position. And Vivek publicly has said he doesn't want to be VP. He's going for president. Again, that's what everyone says, and they have to say, because as soon as they say they're not in it to win it, the donations will just dry up immediately. So I understand he's not saying that, and the career bureaucrat, that's what they're doing. They're running so they can get a cabinet position. They're running so they can get maybe VP or something like that. And Vivek does have a business background, but he separated himself from his major pharmaceutical company a couple of years back. And it was actually before he wrote the book Woke Inc., where he talks about the conflict of interest between businesses and becoming an activist. So I can't help but think it seems like he really wants to make a difference in politics. I think he's either going to use this as a springboard for another position, or he will, because he's being very clever with his positions with Trump. He's not insulting Trump. He's praising him when appropriate. So I think it is really a compelling reason to have him be a VP. He's also from Iowa. Or sorry, almost as good as Iowa. Ohio. That's a pretty good state to have in terms of a VP. You want a couple of states that are close or are flip states, or swing states rather, where they go back and forth between the parties every couple of years. Florida is pretty locked in for Trump. He needs someone I think more in the Midwest and more around those areas who can spend more time also geographically. Another thing Trump needs to think about, whoever he picks as a VP or as a running mate, they need to be campaigning the hell out of it, because right now, as the books still stand, Trump's going to be locked into court dates in states that are not much swing states. So his time and resources are getting locked up. So he needs to be very strategic with his VP pick. In my 3 cents, Vivek would be a I think that'd be a very strategic move on the chessboard, so to say. Let me know in the comments, do you think he'd be a good running mate? It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Again, we're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of August, so you can click that button. I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, all the likes and the comments help out the channel as well, not just with the feedback, as it helps me become more proficient at the job and make the show more entertaining and higher quality, but also helps with the algorithm and gets those videos shared more often, so you get more views. And the more we build it up, the better the quality we'll be able to get. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.